All right, this week on With Purpose, we are talking about President Lincoln. Great picture of what a leader is. This is one of my favorite pieces of art by Leroy Neiman. He did two pictures of Lincoln. This was the first and by far the better one, I think. Yeah, cool. This is Lincoln. All right, so this week on With Purpose, we are talking about President Lincoln and his style of leadership, which I think is incredibly impactful. You know, Doris Goodwin Kearns wrote this really thick book, like really thick and dense. It's good, but it's really thick and dense book called Team of Rivals. And that is a great explanation of Lincoln's leadership style. You know, if you're not familiar with his presidency, Lincoln came to power just as our country was going through incredible tumult. Before we look at his time as president, let's look just a little bit at where he came from. So Lincoln was born in 1809 in Hardin County, Kentucky. He grew up in a log cabin, grew up in poverty, really tough upbringing, largely was self-educated, actually taught himself law and became a successful attorney. And then later ran for a state legislature in Illinois and was a congressman for one term before becoming president. So Lincoln won the election of 1860 to be president at a time when our country was incredibly tumultuous. Lots was going on. And in fact, right after his victory, several of the southern states actually seceded from the Union. And the next year, we started the Civil War. So not exactly a great time to be president of the United States. The Civil War and the events surrounding it became the defining events of Lincoln's presidency, right? So it started shortly after he took office. It was a couple years later in 1863 when we see him do the Emancipation Proclamation where he declared all slaves free. And then also that same year, the Gettysburg Address that all of us are probably familiar with. But it wasn't actually until April of 1865 that the Confederate forces finally surrendered and the Civil War was over. And then less than 2 weeks later, on April 14th, he was assassinated in the Ford Theater. So Lincoln got to enjoy a country at peace for less than 2 weeks, which is incredibly sad and kind of crazy to think about. So his entire time as president, he was leading a divided nation. And he had to do it in a way that tried the whole time to bring everybody together, to bring all sides of this divided country to the same table. So how did he do it? The first thing that Lincoln did is, after his election, he actually appointed a cabinet full of his rivals. So people that had ran against him or spoken out against him during his run for the president, he actually invited them to participate in his cabinet. He chose his strongest competitors for roles like Secretary of State and Secretary of the Treasury and other key positions, and he prioritized their competence over loyalty, and he also invited their challenge, which is rare in leadership we see today. Often we want to surround ourselves, or we see people surround themselves with people that think the same way as them, that will say, yes, sir, no, ma'am. Whatever the direction the leadership wind is blowing, they go along with it. Lincoln did exactly the opposite, right? He chose very purposefully people that disagreed with him to add to his cabinet, so he heard their voice, and he also knew that they would bring along different parts of the country that agreed with him. He invited them to the leadership table. So appointing his rivals to the cabinet took a lot of confidence, but it also took a lot of leadership ability. And he demonstrates even more of that leadership ability with how he managed the challenges in those cabinet meetings, right? And so instead of getting offended, instead of directly challenging them back, he responds with humility and curiosity to their ideas when they're different from his. He invited discussion. He did not take things personally. Let me say that again. He did not take things personally. I think so often as leaders, when somebody disagrees with us, we think they are disagreeing with us, like the person, not with our ideas. We need to be able to separate, and he was able to separate ideas from people so that we can have productive conversations and relationships with people about our ideas and their ideas and where they're different and where they're the same. That's how he was able to find common ground and how we can do the same. This leading with humility and maintaining authority, though, also takes another thing. He had to be able to admit when he was wrong. So this is where humility from him really came into play. So Lincoln was actually really good at that. He was good at separating people from problems, people from feelings, and to be able to have strong relationships with the people on his cabinet, listen with curiosity when they disagreed with him, and then his next step as a leader was to make firm and good decisions. So we're not always going to have consensus. He certainly was not going to have consensus when he purposefully built his cabinet with his team of rivals. As leaders, there's going to be moments that we need to make decisions that are not going to be popular in the time. Think about the country in 1863 when Lincoln was giving the Gettysburg Address or when he was issuing the Emancipation Proclamation. Think about how divided it still was, recognizing the fact that it would be 2 more years, not till 1865, April of 1865, when the Civil War would actually be over. The words that he said in that address, the words that were written in the Emancipation Proclamation, took courage to say, they took conviction to say. And I don't think that anything I do as a leader today rises to quite that same level. And I doubt anything you're working on rises to that same level either. But I know that you make controversial decisions, and I know that I make controversial decisions sometimes, and that unless we are doing that with conviction, with a lot of thought and a lot of input from people we agree with and disagree with along the way, those decisions aren't going to be right. And they're not going to be conveyed in a way that's impactful to people, understood by a population, whether that population is our company or our community, and they're not going to be enduring. So, what can we take from this? What can we take from the lesson of President Lincoln? We are going to lead our organizations in times when not everybody agrees with us. We are going to lead our organizations in times when the fight is long and going to be longer, and we still must have the courage to say the right things, to make the right decisions and push for the right outcomes, even when it's not popular and even when it is hard. That's enough for today. Okay, so we can talk about President Lincoln all day long, and we probably should, because his presidency contains so many lessons on leadership that are applicable even today. But we've probably covered enough. And so now I want to move into just a moment of reflection for you and the tasks and projects and everything you've got staring in your face from the week ahead. But before we get there, let's start with our question that we always start with. What are you grateful for this week? Gratitude is the foundation of joy and happiness, which is where we want to operate from. We don't want to operate from a place of scarcity or fear. So what are you grateful for? As a reminder, we have a special planner for each of our episodes available for you to download, either linked in the show notes or available on my website at benhutton.com. For each of these questions, we are going to give you about 30 seconds to process them. If you need some more time, just hit the pause button. And as always, what are the things that you're putting off? So the questions that I have for you this week are: who in your organization or industry that you typically disagree with or have perspectives that are different from should you invite to your leadership table? Who should be giving you input that you're not getting it from? And the next question for reflection is this: in what current situation, opportunity, or problem you're dealing with do you need to demonstrate some Lincoln-style leadership in by acknowledging that, yes, there's different perspectives at play, but there is a right answer, and that's what we're going to do? And then laying out your plan to move forward. So that's it for this episode of With Purpose. I hope it's been challenging for you. Lincoln's style of leadership, inviting a team of rivals to participate in your decision-making and leadership process, feels risky and it's hard. But it's how we make better decisions, and it's how we build strong and enduring relationships, and ultimately it's how we best lead our companies. I hope that you can apply some of that this week. I hope that you'll join me here again next week when we meet together again for another episode of With Purpose. I'm your host, Ben Hutton. I hope you have a great week.